Welcome to CineMyles, the show for cinephiles. I'm your host, Miles Hughes. I'm joined tonight by my dad, James Hughes, and we just saw The Founder, which stars Michael Keaton as Ray Kroc, the quote-unquote founder of McDonald's, who actually pilfered the idea away from the McDonald's brothers, Mac and Dick. Ray Kroc is played by Michael Keaton in a tour de force performance, and Nick Offerman and John Carroll Lynch play the McDonald's brothers. I had very high hopes for this film. I was really impressed by the trailer. I figured it would be a pretty big Oscar contender, although it didn't end up getting much attention, 0 nominations. I, overall, really enjoyed the film.
I thought it was great. I was impressed. I mean, I was interested because I know a little bit about the story and the history, so there was a piece of it that I was just curious.
The big thing that carries the film throughout is Keaton's performance.
Yeah, he's outstanding.
The whole film is sort of structured around his drive, his sense of, even though he's, up in his 50s, he's got that hunger still to succeed. And when he finds the McDonald's single burger stand and he sees this possibility that even the owners haven't really tapped into, he sort of takes it by the horns and runs with it.
Yeah, he does a good job. I mean, he plays a person who spends most of his life kind of a failure with really sort of cockamamie ideas that don't work, and a really vulnerable character. But in another way, he becomes an extraordinarily successful character. And Keaton plays it with that ability to show vulnerability and self-doubt, as well as showing drive and determination to succeed.
It's nice to see Nick Offerman in a dramatic role sans mustache after Parks and Rec.
Absolutely, he's great in it.
He's great. John Carroll Lynch is one of those really dependable character actors that I don't think gets enough credit. He's got one scene near the end of the movie where he's just giving him a look after sort of the handshake deal, and he's barely doing anything, but you feel so much sympathy and sadness for him.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing about this film. You see it in Laura Dern, his wife. There's an awful lot of the film which isn't dialogue. It's actually just looks. It's how people stare, their facial expression. I mean, it's very subtle. I think you have to pay attention to the movie and you have to be involved in the story, but there's a lot of emotions conveyed by looks and stares and smiles.
Ultimately, what the filmmakers clearly care about is sort of the toll that it takes on all of the characters. Even Ray Kroc, by the end of the film, you can tell that the terrible things he's had to do to create this empire are sort of gnawing at him.
For me, the other thing that I think was good about the film was a kind of nostalgia. I remember seeing the early McDonald's roll out in the 1960s, and it's hard for people to know today just how unique it was. The world was full of burger joints and drive-ins. I remember seeing the first few come out, and it was transformative, and now it's commonplace. And it was just, for me, to sort of see that and some of the history was a lot of fun.
Well, and you can speak to that probably a little better than I can,
yeah,
but
well.
it seemed to recreate the period pretty effectively.
It did.
But also not in the way that draws as much attention to itself. It was able to just exist in the period without having to be all about the period.
Exactly, and they didn't glamorize it in any way. It looked authentic. It looked genuine to what it was like in those days, and beat up cars and beat up restaurants, and it was very authentic. I think for me the best part is the interaction between Ray Kroc and the McDonald's brothers. All those interactions back and forth, the sort of sharing of the initial excitement of the idea, to the business dealings, to the back and forth tug of war between who had what control and who could say what, to the eventual control of the whole concept.
If I had a major negative about the film, it's that as it goes on, those interactions become fewer and further between. Yeah. And I think those are sort of the most interesting. Whenever they get onto a phone conversation, it's a bit more exciting because some big piece of the story is about to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. There's some slow parts where it sort of lulls a bit when that isn't happening.
I really like the montage when the McDonald's brothers are explaining to him how they came up with the system, and you see these scenes of them in the tennis court, like sort of literally drawing out what the kitchen's going to look like and having people go through the motions until they can almost form like this choreographed dance of how to have the most optimized system. And it's just fascinating to watch them sort of, trial and error and eventually figure it out.
Oh, it's extremely clever. I mean, they explain the concept of McDonald's in a very graphic way without losing the audience, and made it very compelling. I thought it was great. The Laura Dern character, his wife, you know, she's a good actress, and I thought she was just kind of a little wasted in it. She didn't have a lot to do, and underused, and just kind of sad looks all the time. I thought she wasn't as good as she could be.
For me, the big thing that jumped out at me was I thought the film was a bit over-edited at times, because it should have a sort of nice, quick pace to it, and it does, but there are a handful of scenes where they're just normal conversations with people, or it'll even be, you know, he'll pull up to a location and stand outside for a few minutes, and we'll get 10 cuts before anyone actually starts speaking, and it just feels less could have been more in that case.
Yeah, I agree.
Otherwise, I thought the technical aspects were great. It's got a nice look to it. They sort of imbue the McDonald's colors in really subtle ways.
I think it's a good movie. I'd recommend it.
I would also recommend it. Definitely worth seeking out for the performances and just because it's a compelling story. All right, well, that's going to do it here for The Founder. Thank you so much for watching CineMyles. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, do all those fun things. Thank you for joining me, Dad.
You're welcome.
And we'll see you all on the flip side. Have a good night.